Hey, so it's Ricky here again, and I wanted to come at you and get a little talk going about my current thoughts and ideas on stuff. In any case, I don't really have a topic for this video other than current events, and that is that the alleged cases of coronavirus here in the USA keeps going up and up. Places, big liberal cities like New York City and Houston and stuff, they're cracking down, forcing people into their homes. And there's some people that haven't even tested positive for coronavirus that once they get to the hospital for breathing problems, they're being told they can't leave, being held there by medical staff against their will. Saw a video of that on Facebook earlier today. Actually, you know what? I just figured out the topic I want to talk about, and it's the nature of power. The nature of power can simply be summed up in answering your own question. What unconstitutional authority that is not specifically outlined in the federal Constitution has been granted to the federal government by we the people, which was then turned around and handed back either to the states or the people respectively? The answer is none. Any power ever given to any government is held on by the government and never returned, and this is called the Rubicon effect. Caesar was initially not a name given to the Roman emperor, but rather a name given to the leader of the Roman army or Roman militia to go and fight the invading hordes that were sacking Italy. And he fought the wars, and when he returned home, he decided, you know what, this democracy or this republic, they don't make decisions fast enough, and I'm going to crown myself king. And I'm going to say that it's in the sake of the people. Because, hey, these guys weren't making decisions fast enough on behalf of the people, and it led to us almost losing our homeland and being stripped of everything we held dear. And that's how the first Roman emperor happened. Was he was a popular guy that rose up into power, inherited a shitty government from a bunch of oligarchs that were running around with their heads shoved up their own asses. And as we know by world history, the Roman Empire turned out to be much worse than what came before it. Just like we know that Nazi Germany turned out to be much worse than the Weimar Republic that came before it. And just like we know that the United Soviet Socialist Republic in Russia turned out to be a hell of a lot more evil and bad than the monarch that came before them. And the nature of power is that power is always sought to be grabbed and grasped by people taking advantage of an emergency, or people taking advantage of the people crying out for a change. And the people are so desperate that they don't give a rat's ass what that change is, as long as it's not what came before it. And you're going to see that in the coming days here in the United States. If you go through Facebook, there's people saying, yes, please, Daddy, step on my dick. Fucking rip off my tits, Daddy, hoo-hoo. You know what I'm saying? There's the people all over the Facebook, regardless of what politician's page it is. They're saying, thank you for protecting us from the coronavirus and taking away all our rights. Thank you for ordering us to stay inside. And there's a lot of rock and stone throwing going on. And that reminds me of a book that I was made aware of called The Lottery. And that is a story about a village or township to where once a year somebody was drawn up through the lottery, and the rest of the people living in the community had to stone them to death, and they had to choose one person per year in the lottery. They didn't know why they had to stone that person to death. All they knew is that the law told them to, and they were afraid of the law. And so no one ever stopped doing it because no one ever stopped to question the nature of that power and where it derived its authority from or why. And you're seeing that happening here in the United States. God gave me a vision 10 years ago that the United States would fall under judgment. We'd have an economic collapse. He told me this. He said that that would be one of the first things to come, was an economic collapse. So one of the second things to come was a bunch of anomalous weather conditions, including fires and drought. And this was as a result of Americans not giving up on their addiction to slaughtering the unborn for the sake of their own convenience, and the weak-spined Christians that won't get up off their ass and ban abortions outright. Instead, pro-life groups are fucking around and finding out that it can be easily made into a money marketing scheme, just like the NRA. The NRA keeps just enough gun control going to where they can continue to money market off of it. And pro-life groups have found out that they can do the same thing by not pushing for the abolishment of abortion, but just restricting it just enough to where it's still alive and they can continue to make money off of it. You know, churches here in the United States aren't any different. A lot of them are 501c3 corporations that are really for profit, that are masquerading as non-profits, whose leadership is being made up of motivational speakers and musicians. Name one church that decided not to build themselves a bigger church, but decided to use the money to send missions into communities and preach the gospel. Name one church here in the United States, or a group of churches here in the United States, that regularly go out of their way and in their own communities try to bring the gospel and stand on the corner and preach hell and doomfire. You don't see it. And when you do see it, it's a group like the Westboro Baptists who preach an absolute heretical message. An absolute heretical message of hate. Of judgment only, not salvation, but judgment only. Whereas the rest of the churches here in the United States preach salvation only and no repentance. I can't hardly tell the difference between T.D. Jakes and Joel Osteen and Dr. Phil sometimes, because they're all operating off of the same scheme, you know? And I said it before and I'll say it again, America's under judgment, and Americans are so blind to their own sin they can't even see that. We got a nice drizzly rain here in April in Texas. Any kind of rain here is a blessing. Since for the last 20-30 years we've been slowly heading into a drought, and it's only let up the last couple of years. But, you know, because of that pastor over in Florida getting arrested for holding church services, my own governor here in the state of Texas, Governor Happy Wheels, or Governor Hot Wheels, depending on who you ask, Greg Abbott, decided to write an executive order making churches and Christian worship centers an essential and quote unquote an essential business, so that dumb law enforcement officers and the politicians' orders whom they are obeying don't go out of their way and persecute people for attending worship. And I'm actually proud of the damn people going to worship in spite of the threat of law enforcement action or the plague, because Psalm 91 says that if you make Yod-Heh Vav-Heh, the great I am what I am, if you make the Most High your shelter, no plague will touch your household. Not you, not your family, not even your damn dog and livestock. You hear me? And if you look at the plagues that came down on Egypt, it might have struck down the Egyptians' livestock, but it did not touch a single hair on the head of the livestock belonging to the Hebrews in the land of Goshen. And that is a promise. And you either believe God or you do not. Now that's not to say that there's some people that'll say, oh, well, if you go out to go to church and do worship during a plague or whatever, you're testing God and you ain't going to have no protection. And that's bull. Testing, if you look at the example in the New Testament where Jesus was asked to test God, it was the example of Jesus throwing himself off of a high building and expecting God to save him. The modern equivalent of that today would be, I don't know, walking up to somebody who you know is infected with the coronavirus and asking them to spit down your throat. That's testing God. Going to worship and congregating and meeting up with the rest of God's people who are brave, have courage, and have faith and are attending church, that's not testing God. That's walking and acting out your faith. You should encourage others who are doing it. You should be proud of those who are doing it because they're showing more backbone and faith than the majority of these alleged pseudo-Christians here in the United States. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end off of here. The rain's picking up and getting louder. And I'm over my 10-minute limit, and I don't want to screw myself up with the algorithm, so peace out.